Captain, oh.
Run to the airport.
And then it's just,
We got a meeting.
Yeah, for you.
And then I'm the only person we got to check.
Okay.
You haven't checked.
This is weird.
No.
Very different than
Yeah, I see
here.
when she called, like,
So.
what? Okay.
We could have it Monday the 23rd.
Yeah.
Oh, in the afternoon on the 22nd?
22nd, yeah, we're looking for 2
Um,
calendars available.
I can make myself available.
You sure?
Yeah, that's actually not a problem.
We'll just check the
November.
date then.
Yeah, I'll make it work. Yeah, we're
Thank
good.
you.
All right.
They changed my flight. I was,
Oh,
had an evening flight out.
yeah.
And they changed it to 9 a.m. in the morning.
No, don't even touch on
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
All right, I think we got everybody here. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. On Monday, September 13th, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for all coming this morning. We try to get through this as quickly as possible. We have an election, another election, our 5th one this year to run tomorrow. And I know staff is busy, well, conducting it already. So I will note that all members are present with the exception of Mr. Wondolowski, who had to be out of town today. So I'll move to excuse his absence if there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And then we'll approve the minutes. Now, just to point out, I think on August 16th, you may not have been attending.
Yeah, I will abstain from the approval on August 16th.
On the 16th, but with, nevertheless, if both Lisa Stickett and I find it appropriate to approve them, that will pass. So I will move to approve the minutes from the August 16th, 2021 election or board meeting. If there's a second,
I will second.
thank you. And all in favor, aye.
Aye.
And my extension noted.
And we'll note your extension, Ms. Chappelle. And then I will move to adopt and approve the minutes from our August 23rd, 2021 board meeting. If there's a second.
Second. Okay, I'll
Thank
second.
you.
All right.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. And on to the advisories and directives. I'll move to acknowledge receipt of advisory 2021-03, Senate Bill 80 and amended Senate Bill amended substitutes House Bill 110, the 134th General Assembly, as well as acknowledging receipt of Directive 2021-18, ballots for the November 2nd, 2021 general election, and Directive 2021-19, General Voter Records Maintenance Program, if there's a second.
Second.
Okay, are there any questions or comments concerning those directives? I may have one question. Let's see here. In regards to Mr. Pilati, the bulk purchasing program, is that something we'll be participating in now, or we have in the past?
We have in the past, and we will do that with the secretary, or I'm sorry, with administrative services,
The state
as the
DAS.
state DAS.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then that one kind of catch-all language that talked about receiving emoluments, so to speak. It was kind of like, it said boards can't work with other groups potentially, and there was a concern. I think the default position the secretary has taken is, hey, if there's an issue that arises, consult with your prosecuting attorney and get some guidance and direction.
Correct. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, is that the private-public collaboration? My only thing, I noted that the advisor did include this language that several key terms were not defined. So, I mean, is that to your point that,
We're gonna-
collaborating with a non-governmental entity, if we are concerned about what that really means, then we need to just consult with counsel.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's-
all right.
And then
Yeah,
finally,
that's ambiguous.
thank you. And then postage rates are going up apparently. August 29th?
Yeah.
Yes, postage rates are going up, and but the way that we use postage, we use all kinds of different types of postage. First class postage, bulk postage, and all those different things. So the post office does provide us with a chart on how that impacts some of the things that we do. But we are assured that anyone who tries to mail back a vote by mail ballot, that ballot will get back to us.
Okay.
Just one other question about House Bill 110, if I could.
Mm.
So that it becomes effective, it's not effective yet, or it's becoming effective. Have we've completed and used all of our CPCL grant money? Is that
That's correct.
Okay, so we won't be affected in that regard.
Much.
Dude, when is this in effect now, or is it?
I believe so. I
Okay.
believe it was part of the budget bill.
Oh, okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments?
If I could just make one comment.
Please.
And it is on letter C, Directive 2021-19, the General Voter Records Maintenance Program. The directive as is has boards of elections mailing out those notices on September 20th. And we have reached out, us and Lucas County, to the Secretary of State's office asking for an extension. And we were granted that extension, and that's the September 30th. Reason being is that, yes, we are in the election cycle. And part of this process, the NCOA process, for those that move within the county, one of the first steps you do is you update their address to the new address that we receive from the post office. Well, we can't do that while our database is locked down, because you mess up the integrity of the data. So we explained that, they understood, and so we will have a 10-day extension. We will be able to get through this election. We will be able to figure out voter history, process provisionals, and be able to do that and keep all the data intact.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to I'll move to certify the post-election audit for the August 3rd, 2021 special congressional primary election. Mr. Cleary, if you could kind of summarize where we're at with that.
Good morning, Brian Cleary, Manager of Ballot Department. On September 6th, we conducted the risk limiting audit for the August 3rd special congressional primary election. There were a total of 75,091 ballots cast in the election. We selected 38 unique batches that consisted of 3,312 ballots. We hand counted those. All results matched the official canvas, resulting in 100% accuracy rate. I'll take any questions you may have.
Terrific. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cleary? Thank you. Job well done by you and your department, Mr. Cleary. Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. On to the protest hearing filed by Richmond Heights Mayor David Roche against the candidacy of Alex Harper for Richmond Heights Councilperson at Large in the November 2nd, 2021 general election. Good morning, Mr. Lawler.
Good morning.
If you want to set it up for us?
Sure. Trent Waller, Manager, Candidate Petition Services. Mayor of Richmond Heights, David Roche, filed a protest against candidate Alex Harper, who's running for Richmond Heights Council at Large. Mr. Roche is a qualified elected in the city of Richmond Heights and can bring the protest. The protest, in essence, is that Mr. Harper is not a qualified elector because he was convicted of a felony and he's been incompetent to be an elector. And the second point was that Mr. Harper is also further incompetent to circulate his petitions because he is a felon. Mr. Harper is registered to vote. The procedure for the CPS and registration is if they're registered to vote, we process the petitions through. We don't look for felonies and that type of information. So.
Sure. Understood. I guess there are no facts in dispute. Mr. Harper circulated the petitions. We certified them. He has some federal convictions. So I
We
appreciate
circulated all but 3 of them.
all but 3 of them. Okay.
The numbers here indicate how many he has valid. If we don't allow him to be circulator, then we know that he has not enough signatures to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler. Appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Lawler before he steps down?
No.
Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Roche or Mayor Roche is here. Yeah. Protester. Okay. You're welcome to come up, sir. I just want to see, is Mr. Harper here? Okay, he is. So I just want to kind of set this up, Mayor Roche. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Yes. Okay. Just so everybody gets an opportunity here. I know all the board members have read your letter and the basis for your protest. I don't know there was a response from Mr. Harper, doesn't necessarily have to be. And then we've consulted with our legal counsel, got his opinion on this matter. Because the way I look at this is pretty much they're the facts, and I don't think the facts are in dispute. And then there's the law, and our job is to apply the facts to the law and make a decision here today. Having said that, Mayor Roche, is there anything you want to add to your letter? Do you have any other additional witnesses at this point, sir?
Yes, I have legal counsel that would like to make a presentation.
Okay. You have an attorney that wants to speak on your behalf, is that it?
Yes.
You have an attorney who wants to speak on your behalf?
Yes.
Okay.
Lisa Drive.
And who is that?
It's Lisa Mack.
Okay.
Walter Hammerfield.
Okay. Do you want to have Ms. Mack come up and speak then?
Yes, I guess.
Okay. Let's see. In what capacity are you representing Mayor Roche here, Ms. Brown?
I am Mayor Roach's attorney,
Well, as an individual or for the city
as
or?
an individual and as the mayor of the city of Richmond Heights. He has filed his bid protest in both capacities.
Right, okay. And you can be heard if you'd like.
Thank you. I just. Hey, Mary.
Mr. Harper, you'll have an opportunity to respond, sir, okay?
Alex D. Harper has 2 federal felony convictions for bank robbery. May I remove my mask?
Sure.
Thank you. One in 2005 and the other in 2011. And I'm submitting certified copies to the Board of Elections. Copies each of the plea agreements whereby Alex Harper pleaded guilty to the offenses, and the judgment entries whereby he was sentenced to federal prison and supervised release.
You can hand those to Mr. Musson. He'll give them to the court reporter. And Ms. Mack, I believe we received copies of those in the protest, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm also giving you copies of the applicable provisions of the Ohio Revised Code to reference in your determination of Mayor Roach's bid protest, or candidacy protest. Got 6 copies here. Please, thank you. As set forth in the candidacy protest letter, by reason of his guilty pleas and convictions of federal felony offenses, Harper forfeited his rights and privileges to be an elector or juror or to hold an office of honor, trust, or profit. See Ohio Revised Code, section 2961.01A1. In addition, and importantly, these felony convictions rendered Alex Harper incompetent to circulate a declaration of candidacy and petition as set forth in Ohio Revised Code, section 2961.01B. Harper was sentenced to 57 months prison time and 3 years supervised release for his first felony conviction, which was for 5 bank robberies. After his release, Harper again robbed National City Bank on June 11, 2011, and he was sentenced to 96 months in federal prison and 3 years supervised release. He was released from prison on August 24, 2018, at which time the 3-year supervised release would have begun to run. Presumably, Harper was still under the 3-year supervised release program at the time he submitted his petition for candidacy for the councilperson at large office in Richmond Heights. The deadline for submission of petitions was August 4th, and he would not have finished his term of the supervised release until after August 24th, 2021. The Ohio Revised Code does provide for the restoration of civil rights and privileges forfeited by convicted felons following the service of the sentence and fulfillment of any post-release conditions. See Ohio Revised Code, section 2967.16C. However, Alex Harper was still under a 3-year supervised release at the time he submitted his petition. He was therefore not eligible to have his civil rights and privileges restored at the time he submitted his petition for candidacy. In addition, the Ohio Revised Code contains a specific provision setting forth that persons convicted of certain offenses may not serve as public officials. See section 2961.02. Disqualifying offense, as defined in that provision, means a theft offense. That is a felony. Theft offense is defined as having the same meaning as in the code, section 2913.01, which specifically includes robbery. A person who pleads guilty to and is convicted of a theft offense is incompetent to hold a public office if holding the public office involves substantial management or control over the property of a political subdivision of the state. And I would submit that the office of councilperson involves both the substantial management and control over the fiscal assets of the city of Richmond Heights. All appropriations and expenditures, including contracts, change orders, land purchases, etc., including all transactions in excess of $5,000, must be authorized by city council. While it is true that council must act by a majority vote, each member is given substantial management and control of the assets of the city, where he may, by virtue of holding the office, exert his influence to affect the decisions of the city council. I respectfully request that this board remove Alex D. Harper from the ballot for the office of councilperson at large for the city of Richmond Heights, because by operation of law, he was not competent to circulate the petition for candidacy, and because he is incompetent to hold an office of honor, trust, or profit. Additionally, the nature of his offenses, that is theft, specifically disqualifies him from holding an office involving substantial management or control over the property of Richmond Heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. Any questions for Ms. Mack from the board members?
No.
Okay. I just one question, Ms. Mack. I mean, you made a statement that he's incompetent to be an elector. I think the next paragraph makes it clear that once he is released from prison, he has the right to vote again if he registers. Would you agree with me on that point?
I would agree with you.
Okay. So that takes out one argument. I mean, I just want to isolate this for the board, Mr. Harper. So what we have left, I think, are 2 points that Mr. Roach or Mayor Roach is making. Is one, that because of his federal conviction, he is prohibited from circulating petitions. And if the board finds that he's prohibited from circulating and do not accept his petitions, then he wouldn't be eligible for office because he didn't submit the number of petitions. Third, I think Mayor Roach is making an argument, or you on his behalf, that somehow if he should be elected, he isn't competent to serve in that capacity. And I think the law is clear to that. That's not our job to decide. That once he is elected, then the city officials can take what steps under your charter you need to take if you don't think he's competent to serve. So from my perspective, and I want to get this down so Mr. Harper can address what the point I think that this board has to decide is, does his federal convictions prohibit him from circulating a petition? Is that the question for the board to answer?
That is, yes.
Okay.
I think that you've correctly analyzed the legal issue.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Mack? All right, Mr. Harper, do you like to be heard, sir? Okay, please come up. Thank you, Ms. Mack. Thank you, Mayor Roach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper, for coming down. I'm going to swear you in since you're justifying. You may keep it on or take it off, sir. It's up to you. Would you please swear him?
Sure, please raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the statement you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harper, please address the board, sir.
Yes, so first of all, I want to thank you guys for your time today. Also, I feel like you elaborated some of the points that I was going to make against the prior arguments, so I don't want to respect everybody's time and not go over the same points. I want to address the final point about being on supervision and circulating petitions. In June of this year, prior to circulating any petition or getting signatures to be on the ballot, I addressed my judge as well as the supervision officer from the federal court that was assigned to me. I had them look into if I was allowed to hold office and B, also allowed to circulate petitions. On both issues, they told me that I was allowed to do both.
I'm sorry, so you asked the federal judge and a federal probation officer whether you could circulate petitions?
Yes,
Okay.
my probation sentence ended. Technically, I was released from prison in June 21st of 2018. I was released to a halfway house. My supervision didn't start until I was released from that halfway house in August. Because of that point is where they said that I was released and I had 30 days to end my supervision. I got out of supervision in August 23rd. and I think leave out the circulated positions August 1st of that month. Again, it was to my understanding that my officer and judge also gave me, I won't say clearance, but said that I was able to do so, being I only had 30 days left of supervision, and as well as the supervision clock started 45 days after I was actually released from prison. So it was a miscalculation there. So that's what I took what I thought to be the proper steps, the proper channels to find out if not only if I was allowed to hold office, but also allowed to circulate.
Can you just clarify, when did the supervision end?
My supervision ended August 23rd.
And just a few things, because I don't think there are any facts in dispute, Mr. Harper. I mean, you did have 2 federal convictions, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were released from prison, you said on the second conviction, June 21st, 2018, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that you were terminated from supervision on August 23rd, 2021, correct? Okay, so those facts aren't in dispute.
No, sir, those facts.
Right, and we've looked, I know the 3 board members, we're all attorneys ourselves, we've had the benefit of our attorney here, the assistant prosecutor, you've heard from Ms. Mack and Mayor Roach. Is there anything, what do you want to add then? If those are the cases and the law says someone that is on even supervision can't circulate, what argument do you have to convince us otherwise?
So a couple things. One, I simply just wanted the opportunity to serve my community. I wasn't in for any sort of gain or anything like that. In fact, even all of this is a lie, when in the sense of I only wanted to get on council in order to be able to have city-sponsored youth programs and more minority engagement. Those are the 2 things that I felt like were missing in this right that I thought I could help add to. So I didn't have any malicious intent. I know a lot of people have spoken about, I guess, my intentions and those type of things. And I know there were a lot of facts presented here today of the case or of the crimes that I committed, but all those crimes were over 10, 15 years ago. I've dedicated time, energy, effort into making myself the best version of myself I can possibly become, and I want to serve my community in that capacity the best way I can. I guess, like I said, to my previous point is I took every possible, I've shook every tree, looked down every rock for anything prior to even embarking on this journey of going to get signatures, of speaking with the residents of Richmond Heights, of doing these things. Not that I wouldn't have done them otherwise, but I'm just saying that to say that it wasn't that I knew this existed, or B, didn't try to do my due diligence prior to getting involved.
Absolutely, Mr. Harper, we understand. I mean, that's why we have hearings, is because there may be disagreements. We want to hear them, decide what the right, but I know no one is questioning that you did this other than from genuine wanting to serve the public in your city. Mr. Musson, you gave us an opinion. It's my understanding, I think you concluded, and I don't, without releasing the opinion, I think that under state law, under a state conviction, that once he was done with supervision, once any person's done with APA supervision and discharge, they would be eligible to circulate a petition. Was that the conclusion you reached under state law?
That's correct.
But there was a distinction I think you made too, said, you know, this is clearly a felony under federal law, that same sort of solution or ability to circulate isn't present for federal convictions. Is that also a conclusion you came to?
That's correct. There seems to be a disjoint. The federal felony conviction forfeits the right to circulate, but the restoration upon the completion of all the sanctions and completion of the post-release control does not restore those rights for felony or federal felonies. Correct.
And I don't want to make it more confusing, but if an individual were to go back to state court and get an expungement, so to speak, of that federal conviction, you may come to a different conclusion. Then.
Possibly, I did not.
You didn't research that. Understood. And it's not a dispute that Mr. Harper circulated while he was still under federal supervision, correct, Mr. Harper?
Yes, under the impression that because of the time that was left, the direction I was left on
Sure.
supervision, that I would get locked up. So,
You want to make a comment, Mr. Harper? Was there something you want to add?
yes, I just wanted to point out, I also looked into the local charter, again, prior to trying to do my due diligence. And there was, as far as qualifications to hold the office, the only qualification was a residency requirement.
You researched that too, sure. Are there any questions for Mr. Harper?
I would just say it just seems to me a matter of legal. It's a matter of law, the issues around what the law is indicating the outcome may be here. I mean, it's sort of interesting to me that there'd be a different rule in terms of restoration for federal felonies than there would be for state law crimes, because there could be a minor kind of crime and a minor federal felony, and someone's eyes that might even be less severe than the state law crime. I don't know. It just seemed like there would be perhaps an absurd result if we distinguish between federal felonies and state law criminal. I'm not a criminal lawyer though, so I assume there's some policy behind the legislature's view of why there would be a distinction. But I don't think that given the legal analysis, it's really maybe unfortunate too, because perhaps had other people circulated the petition for you, we would have potentially a different result here, as opposed to you having circulated the petitions and then what, in my view, leaves you short for the outcome here today. That's just how I read the law and how I'm likely to rule on a motion to uphold the protest.
Ms. Sticken, any question or comment?
No, I think, I guess I would just confirm, if we're talking about the circulating, the petitions he circulated, my understanding then is that would still then take, unfortunately, him below the 150. I just want to make sure I'm correct about that.
That is my understanding, but I would defer to Brent.
Okay, yeah, correct, okay. I just want to confirm that because I think that is the issue. And so it's an issue of, for me, when we're looking at the law, the circulating, as my colleague pointed out. And so that's why I wanted to kind of get clarification on that.
Thank you, Ms. Sticken. I will make a motion to uphold the protest filed by Mayor David Roche against the candidacy of Mr. Harper for Richmond Heights Councilperson at Large in the November 2nd, 2021 general election. If there's a second.
Second.
Many of my colleagues have set forth their reasons, Mr. Harper. I don't take any pleasure in having to uphold the protest. And unfortunately, there are many, many collateral consequences as a result of felony convictions, some that make completely no sense. There is a distinction here between state and federal law. Ms. Chappelle commented on it. It's similar to the fact that federal convictions can't be expunged in federal court too. You have to go to state court. So there are anomalies that don't make any sense in some cases. So, but based on the reasons I previously stated, the undisputed facts that you did circulate while you were under supervision, even if it was a state conviction, does prohibit you from circulating those petitions because they couldn't be circulated, they can't be accepted by this agency, and therefore I must vote to uphold the protest. Any other questions or comments from the board members?
No, thank you for coming down.
And Mr. Harper, thank you. I appreciate your
You're welcome.
participation in this process. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Harper, Mayor Roche, Ms. Mack, thank you. And we'll make those documents part of our record here today. Okay. Certification of the remaining charter amendments for the November 2nd, 2020 general election. Set forth, there's any summary we need or any comment that you want to add, Mr. Pilati?
And unless there's a question, no, these are just the remaining, that came in close near the charter deadline.
Terrific. Mr. Waller, anything to add to that? Okay, thank you. Normal. All right, and we can all get them on the ballot. No one's challenged. That's good. All right, I will move to certify the remaining charter amendments for the November 2nd, 2021 general election. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. I will move to certify the candidates and writing candidates for the November 2nd, 2021 general election. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Waller? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, and on to number 7, the withdrawals. I'll move to acknowledge the withdrawals of candidates, the withdrawal of candidates and issues from the September 14th, 2021 primary election and the November 2nd, 2021 general election. That would be Cleveland Heights Mayor, Ms. Josephine Moore has withdrawn as a candidate. And for the withdrawal of candidates for the November 2nd, 2021 general election, Bay Village School Board Member Timothy Jerome, Cleveland Heights Council for the unexpired term 12/31/23, Adam May, and the Rocky River School Board seat Grace Kennedy. And withdraw from issues November 2nd, 2021, North Randall proposed tax levy and for fire purposes, and then also the North Randall proposed tax levy for police purposes. If there's a second.
Second?
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And on to 8, I will move to acknowledge the Cleveland Heights Ordinance 115-2021, which provides for a special election to be held on November 2nd to fill an unexpired term of council. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from Mr. Lawler? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I will move for the preliminary authorization for the allocation of voting booths for the November 2nd, 2021 general election. And allocation quantities are based on social distancing and room size for polling locations. A total of 4,592 voting booths will be allocated, plus 838 DS200 precinct scanners and 157 ADA automark voting units and 1,128 electronic poll books. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Please.
Sure. Is there, do we always do this on a preliminary basis?
Yes, so we are,
I know there could be changes, but I
well,
don't
this
recall
will,
seeing it being preliminary authorization.
yeah, sometimes it says preliminary, sometimes it might say initial. So there's a couple things like this ballot order, we need to come about 90 days out and then we need to come back within 30 days. So you'll see this again.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And on to I will move to approve to send the voter information guide to all active voters for the November 6th, 2021 general election. Ms. Susie, anything to add?
I just wanted to point out that we did use our new Infor purchasing system to send it out to 40 registered suppliers, and we had 3 bids, and Angstrom was the lowest bidder.
So this motion is part of the bids that you and your office sent out, is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm looking for my paperwork that you sent us about that. There were 3 bids there, or?
Yes. On the site, I had a second page to the letter. Angstrom Weeklies and NPC Inc., which is out of Pennsylvania, were the 3 bidders. So Angstrom bid $35,134.50. Weeklies was $47,037.75. And NPC was $66,600.
So you had 3 bids, and the recommendation is to award it to Angstrom's.
Right, the
Correct.
lowest.
The lowest bid. And that includes not only the printing, but getting it ready for mailing too?
Printing and mailing.
Yeah, we pay for the postage.
Pay for the postage.
Excellent. Okay. Had they bid before Angstrom?
Angstrom has been the lowest bidder in the past 3 or 4 voter information.
So we've worked with them then, obviously.
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments?
And I believe they did, I think they did August and the September election, so the 2 most recent.
I just have a couple of questions. So I didn't see the info on the actual guide about the public health guidelines. Where is that? Did I miss it? Because in the memo, it says the guide includes specific information regarding public health guidelines. I don't see it on the guide unless I missed it.
The only thing that we reference is that we will be following the current CDC and Ohio Health and Safety guidelines.
Oh, okay, that's how we intended it.
Well, no,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that seems to be an ever-changing status these days, what those guidelines are.
Yeah, okay, all right. And then the only other question I would ask, is there any, why was NPC bid so high? And were you able, from the bids, are you able to discern why?
we can usually reach out to them, but they're not local, they're in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
They have something to do.
Okay,
And I want to say, this is the first time I've seen them come across and submitting a bid at NPC. We typically see weeklies, Angstrom, HCAM, things like that. So this was a new one.
okay. I mean, it's always nice to have new bidders. It'd be nice if the price was low. Thank you.
Thank you. I will make a motion if I happen to approve the voter information guide for all active voters for the November 2nd, 2021 general election. If there's a second.
Second.
Any more questions from Ms. Susi or Director Kalani? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I'll move to approve the vouchers as set forth. These vouchers, I think, all pertain specifically to postage. which is a big expense for us, but that's understandable.
Except for the S&S
Oh, right.
$430,000.
Maintenance,
Yeah.
that's our annual maintenance contract.
Yeah, I would say,
But that's something we contracted for and we've agreed to previously. So I'll move to approve those vouchers if there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Ms. Susan. All right, and on to the personnel agenda, Mr. Pilati.
Before you, you have a recommendation for the promotion of Tydri Marusa from election official to in the ballot department to supervisor in the ballot department. We refer to her as Ty. Ty's been an employee here with the agency, permanent employee for 10 years and then a temporary employee before that, starting in registration and then transferring over to the ballot department probably about 5 years ago. Ty is she's a strong employee. She is one of our bilingual employees that we have here at the agency, which has been very instrumental in the ballot department in that she leads up the bilingual proofing of the ADA auto mark, because that is a verbal tool that we have, as well as she is helpful in the written proofing and working with our bilingual coordinator too if there's questions with items. She is someone who volunteers for all kinds of processes, is eager to learn, has a very good rapport with her coworkers and the management team there. And I would say that Ty is probably one of our up and coming employees in this agency.
Thank you. And of course, because ballot is so important, and our party affiliation is Republican because we're replacing a Republican.
That is correct. And so we have 4 supervisors in the department before Ty. We have 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, and Ty would be bring balance to that and have a 2-2.
And you'll have to repost her position then, of course.
That is correct.
All right, yes, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Pilati? Okay, hearing none, I will move to approve the personnel agenda summarized by Mr. Pilati. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And on to new business, CCBOE website update.
I just want to give a brief update. At our last meeting, we went a little more in depth and we showed a picture of it. I want to let you know where the status is of that implementation. We had a meeting last Wednesday, our county IT with our BOE IT with county IT, and we identified what are the few things that we need to have tested and in place in order to go live. From that meeting last Wednesday, there were a few things that county IT told us we needed to have tested by this past Friday. We met our deadline and did that. There were a few bugs and county IT is currently working on that. As well as last week, we put more emphasis on proofing the user interface on a mobile phone. A lot of the testing we had done was more so on laptops or computers to get that. Now that we have that content well, we did spend a lot of time on with the mobile device. We found some display issues and we brought those to the county's attention, and pretty much, and they are very responsive working through these items. We agreed that tomorrow is the drop dead date. Tomorrow we determine either we go live before November or we don't. And from the county's perspective, they think it's easy to get there. Our staff, Mary Hannah in particular, thinks that we can get there, but we will know tomorrow for sure. If we do go live, then, or if everything is fine by tomorrow's deadline, we'll go live on Monday, September 27th. And then that'll give us, which means that by this Friday, the 17th, everything will kind of then be locked down. We'll spend next week working with political parties, getting them up to speed, nonprofit organizations, kind of taking them through how this works. So we'll do that during that week before we flip the switch and go live. So tomorrow we will know. The county understands that the only pressure for tomorrow is to get it right. And if that means that we can't have it in place for November, then we won't do that because we can't fumble through this. And so it's not like I'm putting pressure on them that they will, well, we have to. No, what we have to do is we have to be a product that we can all stand by. So
Are there many kinks to work out before tomorrow, or are these minor things?
I think they're minor things. They are minor things. Of course, I'm not the IT person, but talking with Mary Hannah, Robin, they do believe that these are minor things that they can work through. However, whatever they have done tomorrow, then, you know, we need to come back and follow behind and make sure that it is correct. So,
Couple things, if I may, you're done, anything?
Yeah, thank you.
So, if you go live and there happens to be a problem that comes up, can we bring the old page right back up again?
yes, we can.
Okay. And two, we've worked with the Secretary of State's office, at least they know we're rolling out a new web page. It's going to be compliant with all their cybersecurity requirements, regulations.
Yes, so they are aware of it. It will meet all cybersecurity, not only Robin working with them, but also Jeremy Neal, because this platform too is supported by county IT, and a lot of our calls with the Secretary of State's office regarding cybersecurity include Jeremy also on those. So that is part of that. And so it meets, we went through all the things that we have to put on our website for the Secretary of State's, like Track My Ballot, links to the Secretary of State's website for online voter registration, all those are there.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I'm hopeful that they're able to work out these last few kinks, because your demonstration of the website, I mean, the website's going to be so much better and a lot more user-friendly, and, you know, have the critical stuff without all the extra, you know, it was a usable website, but it was really hard. There was just so much information on there that actually became difficult to use from a user standpoint. So I'm hoping that we can get it rolled out before November. So, but understand it will not be out if it's not ready to go. So, but thanks for the hard work on the website. I think it's going to be great once it's user up and usable.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, and then an update on the investigation our staff conducted regarding the circulator statements from former mayoral candidate, Mr. Simmons. Mr. Callagher?
Yeah, as you know, Landry Simmons submitted his petitions to run for mayor in June. His petition was short the required number of signatures, and he decided to withdraw from the race. On some of his petitions, staff noticed the circulator number witnessed was changed and reduced, and initials not matching the circulator were added. The board asked that we do further investigation. On July 14th, myself and Hassani Wheat made some phone calls to individuals involved in the Landry Simmons petition drive. They included circulators and those involved on the quality assurance team. What we found was that the Landry campaign had made the decision to only pay for signatures from people who resided in the city of Cleveland, since those the petition was requirement was that people reside in the city of Cleveland for the mayor's race. The quality assurance team would go through the petition and count up any of the non-Cleveland signatures, and then they would subtract that number from what would be paid to the circulator for collecting signatures. In addition, they changed the circulator statement number to reflect that adjusted number. Unfortunately for the candidate, their actions caused errors, and many of the part petitions were invalidated. As we made the calls, we did receive, we spoke with Kathy Adams, Gerald Henley, who were responsible for the quality assurance. Kathy also was a circulator. And then we spoke with Sarah Butler and Wilma Greer. Some additional comments from them. They confirmed that this was the process and this is what was happening. Sarah did say on some occasions that she would count up the number of signatures, and then that the quality assurance person would initial it in her presence. But then also Wilma Greer indicated that, because we noticed some of the part petitions had initials, but no updates on the number. So we questioned her about that, and she said that she was instructed to leave that number blank and that somebody else would later fill it in, which is.
So it would appear the motivation and the reasoning for these changes were to save money.
Yeah.
I mean, that they they thought if we'll cross off a non-Cleveland resident, then we don't have to pay these circulators for those signatures that aren't valid.
Right, I mean, which they could do, but they shouldn't have tampered with the petition itself. They could have tracked that on the side, whatever their decision was. So the issue for us was the fact that when they changed that number, and on 14 of the part petitions, they changed the number incorrectly or filled it in incorrectly, which caused those part petitions not to be counted, which according to the Secretary of State's election official manual, the first step in verifying the part petitions is to verify the accuracy of the part petitions. On 14 of those incidences, the number written there did not accurately reflect the number of signatures on there. In fact, it undercounted it, which would invalidate the whole part petition.
So he initially submitted, his campaign submitted these petitions.
Yes.
Did we determine that he didn't have valid signatures because of these
He just
alterations?
didn't have enough valid signatures as part of the 14 that were invalidated, which is normal procedure. If the number is under, then we don't count the part petition. So yes, he was short.
And that caused him to be short. Then.
Right.
Is that correct? And then he withdrew.
Correct. Okay. And then we just went back to get a little more information as to why those initials were on there in the first place.
And I know we don't, and don't give advice, legal advice to candidates petitions, but do we give a little frequently asked question sheet to them, like don't change the number or don't cross things out unless the actual signer's present and things like that?
So we have individuals who do come here to the board to get the petitions. We give them a whole packet with all kinds of information that they have. And so we give it to them on the front end when we give it, and then when they come in and file, we also take time and we educate the candidates on what they're turning in. So.
Any questions for Mr. Gallagher? I mean, I'm glad you did the investigation you needed to. I'm not asking for a recommendation. I guess that's our decision about how to proceed here. After this investigation, I don't know that there's a need to do anything else, but what do your board members think that are here?
Yeah, unfortunately, the quality assurance wasn't the quality assurance that they needed to have. It sounds like they were cooperative in the investigation and probably, just didn't really understand what they were doing. I appreciate and understand, and we are obligated to investigate irregularities. My view is, unless we find something that suggests there was improper motive or some evil intent or purpose, people unfortunately frequently misunderstand the law. Heck, we are required to interpret the law. We don't always get it right. So, if there's, not some, bad purpose associated with it, I'm not in favor of sending it over or making a referral for, the prosecutor to investigate. I'm glad that they cooperated. In addition, he withdrew. It's not like, it's an issue, they're on the ballot, or, he withdrew his candidacy. So I appreciate the hard work that was done. I think it's important for us to do that, to be able to make a determination. But in my view, this is probably nothing we would move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Stickman?
I think the investigation is pretty thorough, consistent with the other situation. I think you've got a lot of information when you question them, so I don't see the need to bring anyone in here for further hearing. I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. I don't believe there's a need for motion. I echo the sentiments of my two colleagues and appreciate the update and consider the matter closed at this point. Thank you. September 14th, primary election update, Director Pilati.
Just give you a quick update since tomorrow is election day. So voter participation is exceeding my expectations, which is a good thing. When we started in the election cycle, looking at the data, we would think we'd have about 15% voter turnout. And based on the absentee numbers, both early in person and through vote by mail, I think we'll be in the ballpark of 20%. So it's still not enough. More people should participate, but 20 is better than 15. Through yesterday, we had just under 3,000 early in-person voters. Today is the last day for early in-person voting. It started at 8, it ends at 2 o'clock today. So we have just a little bit of time left for that. Vote by mail. The application deadline was this past Saturday at noon. And we have about 21,300 and 3 vote by mail applications that we processed through that deadline. We have gotten or received back a little over 15,000 ballots, which is only 72%. So we always hope to get at least 85%, somewhere between 85 and 90 is realistic. So we're not there yet. However, to get that 85%, we need to get around 18,000. So about 3,000 more ballots. We'll get ballots today, we'll get ballots tomorrow, and it's very reasonable to expect at least 1,500 ballots back per day in the mail to get those numbers. Plus, we have the 10 days after for some more to come in. So I think we will get our typical return rate. So all things are going well on that front. Peo Recruitment, like it has been all year, continues to be a challenge. We're not having the people beating down the doors like we did last year to work, but we do have enough workers to be successful tomorrow. We do have over 1,500 individuals who are trained and ready to go. At least through Saturday, the number of people calling off this weekend was minimal, so that's always a good sign. So we're happy with that. Typically, we know that we try to hire 4 poll workers per precinct, and that's what the code sets out for. We, as a course of business, sir, always take the motion to do not less than 2. So right now, we're averaging about 3.5 workers per precinct. So with that, we'll be fine, because what we do is we shift and we allocate. And the larger locations, we will, it's easier for us to go with 3 people per precinct there, and the smaller locations that have 1 to 2 precincts, make sure that those are ramped up. We do have a pool of standby workers that we don't touch those until Tuesday morning, and we do have that sitting in the bank for us to do. Election support is working with Berman's Moving. They're the ones who deliver our voting equipment. We have, 7 locations that will be delivered today. We always have some the Monday before, probably a couple more than we typically would, and that's because of Labor Day. While we had individuals here, a lot of the locations where we delivered to were closed, so it makes that number just a little bit higher. But Victor is on top of it in constant communication with them, and those all should be delivered before noon today. Let's see what else. So we are using, again, the county command center as the primary hub for our call center. We started doing that last year, and we're doing it for all big elections. It works well. We have a representative from the power company, from the sheriff's office, county public works and all that. They're all right there at our fingertips. So if something happens on the field on election day, it's just basically saying something across the aisle to somebody and they're on it. So we're doing that, and that works out well. County's a good partner with that. For tomorrow night, we have 52 individuals who signed up to work election night up on the 2nd floor, plus Cleveland Heights High School will be coming back again to work on the loading dock. We had hoped to have more individuals sign up, but that number is pretty close to where we were for August for election night, and the number of precincts is pretty comparable between August and September. So we will be successful in getting through that. So pretty much everything is running on course. We're in good shape. Once the meeting's done today, this will all get torn down, get torn into the electronic poll book call center, and we are prepared and ready for tomorrow.
And approximately how many precincts would be?
We have 442 precincts.
A little, almost half, a little less than half.
Yeah, I think it's about 45%.
Any other questions for Mr. Pallotti?
We only had 513 for the special congressional, so it is pretty much comparable.
Correct.
Election.
A little bit
A
smaller.
little smaller than that, so that's great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else under new business from the board members? We will have some public comment. I just want to remind myself, we'll talk here at the conclusion of public comment about rescheduling the November 23rd meeting. Okay, that's well, in fact, we can just mention that now. I'm good for the 22nd. I know staff is good for the 22nd, correct?
Afternoon, if we can.
Do you want to do like 2:30? Is that what you're thinking, or?
If 2 o'clock too early,
We
or
can do 2.
2 o'clock,
2 o'clock.
I'll go with that,
works
yeah.
best for, I appreciate, I
Of
have a
course.
conflict, so I appreciate that.
I'm gonna, having heard that and deciding, I will reach out to Mr. Wondolowski to see that he's available. If he isn't, we'll do an email to see what needs to be done. Otherwise, I anticipate he'll be available. So,
Thank
all
you
right,
very much.
thank you. All right. Hearing none, I know we have some public comment. Ms. Peg Gallagher was the first to submit. Is she here, Ms. Gallagher?
I am.
Great, come on up. And then we have Judge Conley too, and I see her in the audience also. So, Ms. Gallagher, we have allotted 5 minutes for your addressing the board. And why don't you begin?
Well, first, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. Again, my name is Peggy Gallagher. I'm a resident of Ward 4. You're probably aware that my councilman, Ken Johnson, was removed from office because of crimes committed while he was a councilman. He's awaiting sentencing, which is scheduled for October 8th. Johnson's crimes were so problematic to service that the Attorney General Yost actually decided to remove him from council prior to his trial's conclusion. Secretary Yost instructed Judge Russo to appoint an interim council person, and my ward is currently represented by Anita Gardner, a community activist. Tomorrow, my ward will be choosing among 11 candidates for councilman, including Ken Johnson. He is awaiting sentencing and he's running for council. As you know, the jury found Mr. Johnson guilty of all 15 counts presented before them. Once again, Ken Johnson is taking advantage of the system. This is wrong. We all know it's wrong. It's not fair to the approximately 14,000 residents, voters in Ward 4. Here's my questions for you. We understand you're relying on a written directive from the Secretary of State that the position Johnson must be incarcerated before being removed from the ballot. How do we reconcile that with the Ohio statute that clearly states an individual convicted by a jury cannot hold public office? Do you agree that it doesn't make practical sense for someone to be allowed to run for an office that he cannot hold? Question 2, are the prosecutor and the judge in the Johnson case aware of the practical problems that the county's Board of Election will face when Johnson is sentenced on October 8th? And more importantly, a change in the ballot at that late date will impinge on the time period that Ward 4 voters will be early voting or mail-in voting. Have you raised this issue with the prosecutor's office that an earlier resolution of the matter would be in the best interest of Ward 4 voters? The final and third question. Due to his long tenure, name recognition, and his liberal distribution of gift cards, I'm concerned that Johnson will be one of the 2 top vote getters tomorrow. This poses all sorts of questions. For example, if Johnson wins and is sentenced or incarcerated after the primary, but before November 3rd, what happens? Will the second and third place candidates be on the ballot? All of this seems incredibly unfair to the voters of Ward 4 who've been through a lot. We need to be able to choose between candidates who are qualified to take office. While we all hope we do not face the problem tomorrow, I encourage the board to be prepared to deal with this fairly and quickly. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Gallagher, and I can assure you we will, because it does pose a unique and interesting, from an academic perspective anyways, I'm sure from a frustrating aspect from you as a voter in your ward, but we will follow the law when it comes to these matters, and the law has been spelled out in that regard. I believe, just to answer some of your questions briefly, and Mr. Musson, we will follow the Secretary of State's directives, and then we're required to, we're sworn to, okay? Not all laws make a lot of sense. I know Judge Conley would agree with my statement sometimes, but you gotta follow them. The judge and the prosecutor, we don't consult with them about these matters. They don't consult with us. It's a federal case. You know, concerning, you said, does he understand the complexities that are involved here? And then if in fact Mr. Johnson were to be one of the top 2 vote getters tomorrow, we'll address that accordingly based on the law, based on when he's sentenced and based on whatever sentence he has to serve. So we're very aware of these things and appreciate you sharing them with us. And again, if you have other questions subsequent, please let us know. Lancer. Thank you.
Yeah, I just,
Oh,
thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say thank you for coming down. I could see why there would be the need to wait until someone's incarcerated, because a lot could happen between the time somebody's convicted, there could be an appeal, but I understand your frustration, and, sometimes the law produces absurd results, and so, just thank you for coming down.
Thank you, Judge Conley. Thank you for coming down.
Good morning. I'm addressing the same issue as Gallagher. I've been a 45-year resident of Ward 4, and actually, Mr. Johnson was elected at the same time I was first elected to Cleveland Municipal Court. And I've done some research on this and addressed this in a couple of columns in Cleveland. I think everything will be dispositive tomorrow if he comes in third or fourth or below on the 11 candidates. If he's 1 or 2, we have this question. And on October the 8th, which I understand is his sentencing day, and which will trigger the actual conviction, because now he's convicted but not sentenced. And his sentencing day becomes the final appeal to order, which would trigger his ineligibility. That is my question, is will that trigger some automatic action by the board? Now, the ballots will already have been printed, and people will start voting on October the 5th. So if this were to go, and then we have to wait until January, if perchance he is elected, and then we have to go until January, and then the city council find him ineligible to serve, then you've got to go through another election, another cost to the taxpayer. So I'm just kind of warning you, I don't know, it's a very great academic question, maybe I should write a law review article or something. But it is a conundrum that will be up to you to decide.
Thank you, Judge Conley. I think you're exactly right. You distilled it. If it's positive, it finishes third or fourth tomorrow.
Yeah,
The question's answered, right?
Right.
But if he shouldn't, you're right. Mr. Musson will be very busy with the council of Cleveland Law Department, with the Secretary of State's office to determine what the correct way is moving
Because
forward.
I'm not sure, would the third person then move up to the second person, because it was a different slate, so it's a
Sure.
very interesting question.
Yeah, it is. And thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your letters, Judge. It's good to see you. Thank you for your letters to the plain dealer. And also there was an interesting editorial. There was an editorial in the paper, I think, yesterday on the same issue. So it's a big issue that needs to be looked at more closely, but thank you.
Okay, and I didn't know the difference between the federal and the state.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's always some interesting things. Come down more often.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Judge. Okay. Mary, any other public comment?
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the staff, from the board? Okay. I will move to go into recess if there's a second.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor, aye.
Hi.
Have a wonderful week, everybody. We'll see you
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
I feel like we learned something.
You do. This was
Yeah,
like a
it's
walk
always
last
a
night.
lot.
Actually something.